Good morning. Welcome, welcome, welcome to your magical Monday. Let's start the day with some new learning and some new takeaways. So over to everyone and let's start our pixel programming with our manifestations. There we go. Let's have the music, Rahul sir. Yes, yes, yes. Each one a winner for life. Let's change the foot once more. Yes, yes, yes. A winner for life. Oh, wonderful. All right, we'll start our day with Luke Cottino's lifestyle pill, a lifestyle weight loss, and let's see what's coming our way in the magic weight loss pill. A lifestyle hack, which is beautiful, which is amazing. So it says if you have a lot of weight to lose, over exercising or strenuous workouts won't help. So this is a myth which all of us have that, the more weight we have, the more exercises will help. So till the time we have reader for the day, let me start the journey. If you're not healthy or fit and carrying too much weight, the best way to start off is easy. Start with balanced nutrition and adequate movement, along with quality sleep and looking after your stress levels. Too much exercise can cause muscle tissue breakdown and also impact the kidneys. You need healthy kidneys every day of your life, and it's not worth compromising them. Over and above, if your kidneys are not functioning to the optimum level, toxins will accumulate, which we know leads to fat gain and prevents weight loss. So very simply, when we are having a lot of weight, usually the KFT levels, kidney functioning levels are not as great. So obviously, even though you have to do this, but so what are we going to do? Are we going to go for testing, or are we simply going to go for a kidney detox, which we have been given? Once we do that, and we know every 2 weeks or 3 weeks is supposed to do it, you will ensure the health of your kidney rather than going for medical tests and then doing something. This way, everyone will become better and better and better. So, all right, we'll do this next tomorrow. 54 will be tomorrow. Today we have our Ikigai. In the Ikigai book today, I want to wrap it up by telling all of us that it's very simple, that we've learned a lot about Ikigai. The idea to do Ikigai was to find our life's purpose. Yet we are doing the book all over again, like in a very short way. Today it's about what people believe that they're doing in Ikigai. The world's longest living people, they're very simply at it. Why are they at it? Because they believe that more food spoils the body. So less food leads to longevity. And that's why it's a very important part of their life to eat less to live longer. They truly believe in it. They believe in some antioxidants which are locally found in their food, and they are very strong believers of eating that. They're strong believers of having green tea, which is again lukewarm water after meals, which a lot of us have been having. And now what they also believe in is exercising. Yesterday we talked about shiatsu and a lot of exercises. You have had the videos, we don't have to go through them again. Exercising, gentle movements, yoga was also a part of it. Sun salutations were a part of it. Tai Chi was a part of it. So many more. So you have to keep going through that again if you are interested in those kind of forms of exercises. Exercise is something which should appeal to us. Lots of forms are available, but what resonates with us is what works for us. If something is there, then you go for it. We spoke about the 5 elements, so I'm not going to go in detail about that. But yes, meditation was a very, very, very important part of it. Breathing better to live longer was time and again told to us again and again. How to breathe was also told to us very, very importantly. We were told not to have stress. Now, just to say, who wants to have stress? Somebody will say, who wants to have stress? But I'm stressed. So what do? Simple, again, to concentrate on your breathing work. When you concentrate on your breathing work and you just ponder with thought, "Ki isse kya hoga? Let me be in the power of now." If you combine your learnings of both the books, then you will definitely be far from stress. And then whatever you know for stress, right? Whatever you want to create as a result, that is what you're affirming. So if I'm stressed about a deal, will I be able to crack through or not? So I'm going to give it positive vibes, change my frequency, radiate at a higher frequency by taking 3 deep breaths in and affirming. When I affirm that for 7 times or 21 times, again and again and again, and start believing in it, that is when I'm so excited and happy, the stress just leaves my body completely. So that is how we're supposed to be living our life. We also spoke about anti-fragility. So where they were talking about how Japan is safe, how all of us as human beings can create more options in our life, how we can learn to live a bit better, how conservatively we can start taking risks in some other field so that we are maximizing our result financially. And they also talked about making ourselves less fragile by some lifestyle systems. So again, I'm going to read them through you, so they're important. They said, don't snack between meals. Eat sweets only once a week. Gradually pay off all your debts. Avoid spending time with toxic people as they pull down your energy. Avoid spending time doing things we don't enjoy simply because we feel obligated to do them. Spend no more than 20 minutes on Facebook per day, because that's again, so what are we being told? Most importantly, we've been told to just concentrate on what is ahead of us. Other things are important, but in a little quantity, not too much too soon. So this is, today we conclude this book. And we also had 10 most important parts of Ikigai, which I will again read. And after we read this, we are going to be done with the book. So what are the 10 rules of Ikigai? The first was stay active, don't retire. So people who have the book in front of you, page number 184. Excuse me. Rahul sir, is it possible to showcase the book on page number 184? I did tell you not to showcase the book because we were going to go fast and wrap it up. But if possible, please showcase. Meanwhile, I'll read. So stay active, don't retire. It says, those who give up the things they love doing and do well lose their purpose in life. That's why it's so important to keep doing things of value, making progress, bringing beauty or utility to others, helping out and shaping the world around you, even after official professional activity has ended. So all of us were told, nudged to find our Ikigai. We were all told to stay active and to find it and keep doing it. Number 2, take it slow. Being in a hurry is inversely proportional to quality of life. As the old saying goes, walk slowly and you'll go far. When we leave urgency behind, life and time take on new meaning. And this is something which is relevant for everything. If you show anxiety to sell something, if you show anxiety to do something, you will never be able to get the full thing out of it. So slowly moving, but consistently is the key. Number three, don't fill your stomachs. Less is more when it comes to eating for long life. According to 80% rule, in order to stay healthier longer, we should eat a little less than our hunger demands instead of stuffing ourselves. So that's something which is very, very, importantly fed in the Chinese and basically in Japanese and Chinese because that's what they're maintaining. Number four, surround yourself with good friends. Friends are the best medicine. Therefore, confiding worries over a good chat, sharing stories that brighten your day, getting advice, having fun, dreaming. In other words, living. Number five, get in shape for your next birthday. Water moves. It is at its best when it flows fresh and doesn't stagnate. The body you move through life it needs is a bit of daily maintenance to keep it running for a long time. Plus, exercise releases hormones that make us feel happy. Number six, smile. A cheerful attitude is not only relaxing, it also helps make friends. It's good to recognize the things that aren't so great, but we should never forget what a privilege it is to be there, here and now, in a world full of possibilities. So if you start comparing and if you start seeing somebody who smiles a lot, immediately his or her comes in your imagination in front of you because it's nice to be around them. Their laughter, their smiles are infectious. So yes, surround yourself with good friends and people who smile and make you smile. So yes, and even if people don't make you smile, you yourself make yourself smile. Do things that you love, automatically you will smile. Number seven, reconnect with nature. This is a very important part of Ikigai and Luke Cortino and Power of Now. Everywhere you will find this. Though most people live in cities these days, human beings are made to be part of the natural world. We should return to it often to charge our batteries. If you hug a tree, your batteries will be recharged. Mother Earth is a giver. So if you're depleted of your energy, and even if you're playing with plants, talking to them, you will get your energy. That's the power of greenery. Giving thanks. Embracing an attitude of gratitude is the most important in life, not only through Ikigai, but through any masters, any teachers, any coaches, any authors. So giving thanks to your ancestors, to nature, which provides you with the air you breathe and the food you drink, to your friends and family, to everything that brightens your day and makes you feel lucky to be alive. Spend a moment every day giving thanks, and you'll watch your stockpile of happiness grow. Isn't that beautiful? Merely by thanking, whether you wake up to attitude of gratitude, lotus, or you write it, or you're doing your magic rock, or whatever you are. If you become a person who's all the time thanking, you will make your happiness grow. Number nine, live in the moment. Stop regretting the past and fearing the future. Today is all you have. Make the most of it, make it worth remembering. This is the entire crux of the Book of Power of Now. Though it's so deep that we're taking such a long time to go through it. But this is what the book is all about. Number 10, follow your Ikigai. There is a passion inside you, a unique talent that gives meaning to your days and drives you to know what your Ikigai is. Yet, as Viktor Frankl says, your mission is to discover it. The authors of this book wish you a very long and happy and purposeful life. Thank you for joining us, Hector Garcia and Francis Morales. So thank you, Rahul, sir, for showcasing this book. I just would like to have a quick hands up or on chat. Have we found our Ikigai as a group, as an individual, or we are still on the hunt of it? If yes, please unmute yourself so we can take it forward. Please understand, until you go deeper, 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 you will not find the beautiful gems. And they're hidden well inside you. It's just about finding them out. So something is there inside you, you have to take it out and bring it out in front of you. It's not so tough. So I again request you to do it if you haven't done it yet. Have you found it? Still to find. Which means, Amit, have you really tried? Have you really done the analysis of writing down the 4 points? If you do not write the 4 points, how are we going to derive it? What we love, what we're good at, what is it that people can pay us for? What is it that the world needs? And these folk programs are intertwined between our passion, between our mission, between our profession, between our vocation. And we will find it if when we are going to be in search of it. So if I'm a seeker, I'm going to become a finder. But if I'm just thinking about it, it's not going to work. So the only thing about this morning series is not just to come here and here, also to implement, to follow, to work, to nudge yourself into a better living. So thank you so much, everyone, for being a part of this, revision for Ikigai. Let's move on to the power of now. The power of now is taking us deeper and deeper. Yesterday, we began this chapter on enlightened relationships. So enlightened relationships is something that all of us need to work on ourselves about it. If we work on it, we will realize that we are definitely in a better position. So from addictive to enlightened relationships, today that is a section all about in the morning. And it says, can we change an addictive relationship into a true one? So yes, Sanya, please read for us. Thank you for volunteering again. The others just wish to hear these days. Thank you for reading. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, being present and intensifying your presence by taking your attention even more deeply into the now. Whether you're living alone or with a partner, this remains the key. For love to flourish, the light of your presence needs to be strong enough so that you no longer get taken over by the thinker or the pain body and mistake them for who you are. To know yourself as the being underneath the thinker, the stillness underneath the mental noise, the love and joy underneath the pain is freedom, salvation, enlightenment. To disidentify from the pain body is to bring presence into the pain and thus transmute it. To disidentify from thinking is to be the silent watcher of your thoughts and behavior, especially the repetitive patterns of your mind and the roles played by the ego. If you stop investing in it with selfness, the mind loses its compulsive quality, which basically is the compulsion to judge and so to resist what is, which creates conflict, drama, and new pain. In fact, the moment that judgment stops through acceptance of what is, you are free of the mind. You have made room for love, for joy, for peace. First, you stop judging yourself, then you stop judging your partner. The greatest catalyst for change in a relationship is complete acceptance of your partner as he or she is, without needing to judge or change them in any way. That immediately takes you beyond ego. All mind games and all addictive clinging are then over. There are no there are no victims and no perpetrators anymore, no excuser and excused. This is also the end of all codependency, of being drawn into somebody else's unconscious pattern and thereby enabling it to continue. You will then either separate in love or move ever more deeply into the now together, into being. Can it be that simple? Yes, it is that simple. Love is a state of being. Your love is not outside, it is deep within you. You can never lose it, and it cannot leave you. It is not dependent on some other body, some external form. In the stillness of your presence, you can feel your own formless and timeless reality as the unmanifested life that animates your physical form. You can then feel the same deep life deep within every other human and every other creature. You look beyond the veil of form and separation. This is the realization of oneness. This is love. What is God? The eternal one life underneath all the forms of life. What is love? To feel the presence of that one life deep within yourself and within all creatures. To be it. Therefore, all love is the love of God.
So what do we understand from this? We've read the entire page and a half. What do we understand? If you and I am present as people, as human beings, and if we keep working on our presence, like, okay, I am in the here and now, and I'm going to get deeper and deeper in it, I'm going to live life beautifully. This is the moment to live. whether I'm alone, whether I'm in a family, whether I'm in a relationship, or whoever. If I remain committed to my right now and I free myself of any possible judgment, then I'm going to actually enjoy my now. Then I will no longer be a thinker, no longer be an analyzer, no longer be a clinger, accuser, all of that which I'm doing, the role play that I'm doing every day. I will no longer, or the waiter, I will not be doing all of that because I'm no longer governed by something which is not me. I'm governed by only two beautiful facts. One is love, one is light. The minute I find love and joy for myself and my life, I am free from all possible suffering. And I'm inching closer to my own life's purpose. So that's what we are being told, to just be, firstly, accept everything in complete harmony. No, everything happens for a particular reason. If somebody's behaving in some way, it's fine. Who am I to judge? Who am I? And that therefore, I will just be separate. When I'm separate from that identity which I'm adorning on of, in the judging department, there's a lot of identity which comes in. If I just be in the now, that's how simple it is. And all of us have elevated it to the next level of this, that. So if you can find yourself formless, timeless, beyond boundaries with people around you, and when there's oneness, that is where love is. Lord and the God has given us only that. And that is what we're supposed to feel deep within us. That's why it's nice to feel gratitude and love for life and just end our day or begin our day with a beautiful feeling of ours. So more power to us as we go in this journey together. So let's take a minute's silence. Let's close our eyes. I live life abundantly. I'm free from judgment. I flow like water, embracing the present, knowing every moment right now is the most beautiful and magical. And that's one that I am following. So it is. Yes, Sanya, could you read the next paragraph, please?
Love is not selective, just as the light of the sun is not selective. It does not make one person special. It is not exclusive. Exclusivity is not the love of God, but the love of ego. However, the intensity with which true love is felt can vary. There may be one person who reflects your love back to you more clearly and more intensely than others. And if that person feels the same toward you, it can be said that you are in a love relationship with him or her. The bond that connects you with that person is the same bond that connects you with the person sitting next to you on a bus, or with a bird, a tree, a flower. Only the degree of intensity with which it is felt differs. Even in an otherwise addictive relationship, there may be moments when something more real shines through, something beyond your mutual addictive needs. These are moments when both you and your partner's mind briefly subside and the pain body is temporarily in a dormant state. This may sometimes happen during physical intimacy or when you are both witnessing the miracle of childbirth, or in the presence of death, or when one of you is seriously ill. Anything that renders the mind powerless. When this happens, your being, which is usually buried underneath the mind.
So let's change the page.
Becomes revealed. And it is this that makes true communication possible. True communication is communion, the realization of oneness, which is love. Usually, this is quickly lost again, unless you are able to stay present enough to keep out the mind and its old patterns. As soon as the mind and mind identification return, you are no longer yourself, but a mental image of yourself, and you start playing games and roles again to get your ego needs met. You are a human mind again, pretending to be a human being, interacting with another mind, playing a drama called love. Although brief glimpses are possible, love cannot flourish unless you are permanently free of mind identification and your presence is intense enough to have dissolved the pain body. Or you can at least remain present as the watcher. The pain body cannot then take you over and so become destructive of love.
So very simply, if we start living in the power of now, if we start flowing in the love, if we start interacting with another mind, only just generically, without even judging them, without even quickly losing ourselves, and we are present all the time, then we are just an extension of love. And then everything is possible, love can flourish. But if the love is conditional, or you're judging it for this hasn't happened, that happened, then you're not free of mind. Then you're not free of that boundaries. And that is when you are just a watcher. And that is when you're a lot of negativity is going on in your body. So very simply, we are not going to be destructing our love, which we've made with so much of love. So let's just flow with it and let's try and be in this. I know it's not easier to do, it's easier to say, but it's not as tough. But it does mean that time and again you need to pull yourself back in the power of now, because you will sway. You're used to that. That's what is your second nature right now. So you will to take time, but you can come back. Relationships as spiritual practice.
As the egoic mode of consciousness and all the social, political, and economic structures that it created enter the final stage of collapse, the relationships between men and women reflect the deep state of crisis in which humanity now finds itself. As humans have become increasingly identified with their mind, most relationships are not rooted in being and so turn into a source of pain and become dominated by problems and conflict. Millions are now living alone or as single parents, unable to establish an intimate relationship or unwilling to repeat the insane drama of past relationships. Others go from one relationship to another, from one pleasure and pain cycle to another, in search of the elusive goal of fulfillment through union with the opposite energy polarity. Still others compromise and continue to be together in a dysfunctional relationship in which negativity prevails for the sake of the children or security, through force of habit, fear of being alone, or some other mutually beneficial arrangement, and even through the unconscious addiction to the excitement of emotional drama and pain. However, every crisis represents not only danger but also opportunity. If relationships energize and magnify egoic mind patterns and activate the pain body, as they do at this time, why not accept this fact rather than try to escape from it? Why not cooperate with it instead of avoiding relationships or continuing to pursue the phantom of an ideal partner as an answer to your problems or a means of feeling fulfilled? The opportunity that is concealed within every crisis does not manifest until all the facts of any given situation are acknowledged and fully accepted. As long as you deny them, as long as you try to escape from them or wish that things were different, the window of opportunity does not open up and you remain trapped inside that situation, which will remain the same or deteriorate further.
Let's understand one thing very easily. So all of us are human beings. We had a human experience, and we're trying to be in the being right now. Have been or will be. We're not doing that. We are being right now. So all of us have a level of consciousness, and all of us here are trying to work and elevate our consciousness, our awareness. Now, when we're aware that this is our body and this is emotion which is very strong, which is love, and with this comes also a sense of judgment. Now, whether that is also about your children, about your parents, about your partner, that's different. Now, we can't root our relationships. We can't make them solid in foundation. Why? Because there is this thing about judging. When you allow a person to be, that person is most comfortable in front of you. He or she can share everything about him or her because you're going to be a friend. You're not going to be a judger. And that is what all of us are supposed to be. Now, whether we're living alone or whether we're living with people or whoever, please understand it is energy which is flowing from one person to another. If you are talking about a compromised language, you're talking about not being able to get something, or you're talking about isse better ho jata, more expectations, then what's going to happen? Your energy will be of compromise, of expectation. And then that is also things which are lack of love. And that is what you're going to be showing to everyone around it. So stop this rut about living life like this. Stop the idea about living in emotional drama all the time. Start energizing your relationships by being in the power of now and telling them that it's okay, everything is great. If they do well, please compliment them. If they're not doing well, just be a listener. Just say, it's okay, I'm here, I have your back. Now, when you do that, you're making your relationship stronger and you're finding that there's a sense of oneness. And then you're not going to be going far from something that you don't like, because now there's no longer any expectation from the other person. And when you do that, you're truly inching towards a life where you are in the now. And whenever opportunity is coming up, you will be able to embrace it rather than feeling, oh no, I'm again trapped. And then you will only elevate yourself rather than deteriorate yourself. So yes, try and do that as parents, as partners, as family. Try and do that. Yes, please.
With the acknowledgement and acceptance of the facts also comes a degree of freedom from them. For example, when you know there is disharmony and you hold that knowing, through your knowing, a new factor has come in, and the disharmony cannot remain unchanged. When you know you're not at peace, your knowing creates a still space that surrounds your non peace in a loving and tender embrace, and then transmutes your non peace into peace. As far as inner transformation is concerned, there is nothing you can do about it. You cannot transform yourself, and you certainly cannot transform your partner or anybody else. All you can do is create a space for transformation to happen, for grace and love to enter.
So you and I can do as human beings is create a space for transformation to happen. So we can't intentionally transform, but we can use practices and lifestyles to transform. And for this, what space are we creating? The space of writing affirmations, the space of counting on gratitude, the space of reflecting on what we're doing, the space for manifestation. And when we do that, we are kind of conditioning ourselves into a newer world where there's peace, there's hope, and there's harmony. And that is when magics happen, miracles happen, because you have embraced yourself and in the power of now, you're feeding the power of now with hope. So obviously in future, what will happen is nothing but hope. So let's again close our eyes and think about what we've studied. I am harmonious in my relationships. My relationships are spiritual because the energy flow is beautiful. Because I am no longer in the judgment mode. I flow like water. I allow everyone to be the way they want. Because I know it's not about me, it's about life. And life flows with full harmony. It's all about me to create that level of peace in me, love in me. And that is what makes me strong. So it is. Yes, Anya, please continue.
So, whenever your relationship is not working, whenever it brings out the madness in you and in your partner, be glad. What was unconscious was being brought up to the light. It is an opportunity for salvation. Every moment, hold the knowing of that moment.
So let's do it. Yeah.
Particularly of your inner state. If there is anger, know that there is anger. If there is jealousy, defensiveness, the urge to argue, the need to be right, the inner child demanding love and attention, or emotional pain of any kind, whatever it is, know the reality of that moment and hold the knowing. The relationship then becomes your sadhana, your spiritual practice. If you observe unconscious behavior in your partner, hold it in the loving embrace of your knowing so that you won't react. Unconsciousness and knowing cannot coexist for long, even if the knowing is only in the other person and not in the one who is acting out the unconsciousness. The energy form that lies behind hostility and attack finds the presence of love absolutely intolerable. If you react at all to your partner's unconsciousness, you become unconscious yourself. But if you then remember to know your reaction, nothing is lost.
So very simply, whenever we start, so now what happens in human beings is, if you have a negative frequency in you, and I am going to get sucked into it if I allow it to come. You are judging, I'll start judging. You are complaining, I start complaining. But if you protect your energy, and if you're just hearing, and if you prepare your consciousness to elevate and just say, it's okay. I am a spiritual being. I am having a human experience, and I am here for a reason. And whatever is happening for its best. Then consciously and unconsciously, we are allowing ourselves to elevate our consciousness every now and then negativity does not control us. Then even if somebody is so bad in front of you and is just crying and crying away or shouting away, you're like, okay, poor guy, he's insecure. He has lack of love, so he's doing this. And your reactions will be controlled by that. You're like, it's okay. It's just fine. And that is what we're supposed to. In fact, all of us are reaching there pretty much. Now we're not judging people so much. We're allowing them to flow, aren't we? We're not as compulsive reactors as we used to be before. Are we? I mean, are we finding a change in how human beings are, how our attitude towards people are? That's because we're realizing that our consciousness is raising. And the presence of love is something all of us are feeling. And now, anything who's doing anyone, like which is intolerable, we are very, very okay with it because we're like, it's just our lack of love. And you just give them more love, light, and healings rather than just complaining and conniving and talking against them. So yes, let's read further.
Humanity is under great pressure to evolve because it is our only chance of survival as a race. It will affect every aspect of your life and close relationships in particular. Never before have relationships been as problematic and conflict ridden as they are now. As you may have noticed, they are not here to make you happy or fulfilled. If you continue to pursue the goal of salvation through a relationship, you will be disillusioned again and again. But if you accept that the relationship is here to make you conscious instead of happy, then the relationship will offer you salvation and you will be aligning yourself with the higher consciousness that wants to be born into this world. For those who hold on to old patterns, there will be increasing pain, violence, confusion, and madness.
So if we hold on to anything which is negative or we are the judgy aspect, we will be aligning ourselves with all the negative stuff. So that is why we are supposed to keep elevating ourselves. And when we keep evolving, we keep elevating, then there will be something called survival of the fittest. The fittest here is mentally fittest, who's aligning himself or herself to a high consciousness that he or she is born with. And when that happens, magic happens. The next question that was asked to Eckhart was, I suppose it takes two to make a relationship into a spiritual practice, as you suggest. For example, my partner is still acting out his old patterns of jealousy and control. I have pointed this out many times, but he is unable to see it. So let's read the answer.
How many people does it take to make your life into a spiritual practice? Never mind if your partner will not cooperate. Sanity, consciousness can only come into this world through you. You do not need to wait for the world to become sane or for somebody else to become conscious before you can be enlightened. You may wait forever. Do not excuse each other of being unconscious. The moment you start to argue, you have identified with a mental position and are now defending not only that position, but also your sense of self. The ego is in charge. You have become unconscious. At times, it may be appropriate to point out certain aspects of your partner's behavior. If you are very alert, very present, you can do so without ego involvement, without blaming, accusing, or making the other wrong. When your partner behaves unconsciously, relinquish all judgment. Judgment is either to confuse someone else's unconscious behavior with who they are or to project your own unconsciousness onto another person and mistake that for who they are. To relinquish judgment does not mean that you do not recognize dysfunction and unconsciousness when you see it. It means being the knowing rather than being the reaction and the judge. You will then either be totally free of reaction or you may react and still be the knowing, the space in which their reaction is watched and allowed to be. Instead of fighting the darkness, you bring in the light. Instead of reacting to delusion, you see the delusion, yet at the same time, look through it. Being the knowing creates a clear space of loving presence that allows all things and all people to be as they are. No greater catalyst for transformation exists. If you practice this, your partner cannot stay with you and remain unconscious.
So very beautiful. We become like the domino effect. We start behaving consciously. We start releasing all judgment. And when the partner sees that, oh my God, this guy or this woman is completely accepting me for who I am, not judging me, absolutely not ridiculing me, and is allowing me to flow whether I'm right or whether I'm wrong, that means he sees the light in you. You are bringing the light in this world of darkness. And that your behavior is going to make him also much better. Do you see that ever in your partners when they come back from work? If they're in a good mood, you get in a good mood. If they're in a bad mood, you're like, okay, stay away from them, or you get sucked in the negativity. So you are the person, you can be who you want to be. You are the change, so be the change. When you are behaving in a fashion where it's all about judgment free, your life is going to be free of all negativities, and your relationship will only become better. Now, next is about the common aspect about the two of them in sync. Let's talk about that.
If you both agree that the relationship will be your spiritual practice, so much the better. You can then express your thoughts and feelings to each other as soon as they occur or as soon as a reaction comes up, so that you do not create a time gap in which an unexpressed or unacknowledged emotion or grievance can fester and grow. Learn to give expression to what you feel without blaming. Learn to listen to your partner in an open, non defensive way. Give your partner space for expressing himself or herself. Be present. Accusing, defending, attacking, all those patterns that are designed to strengthen or protect the ego or to get its needs met will then become redundant. Giving space to others and to yourself is vital. Love cannot flourish without it. When you have removed the two factors that are destructive of relationships, when the pain body can be transmuted and you no longer identified with mind and mental positions, and if your partner has done the same, you will experience the bliss of the flowering of relationship. Instead of mirroring to each other your pain and your unconsciousness, instead of satisfying your mutual addictive ego needs, you will reflect back to each other the love that you feel deep within, the love that comes with the realization of your oneness with all that is. This is the love that has no opposite.
So, to all the partners here or family members who are here, now consciously start telling each other that we're going to make our relationship spiritual. Practice with people who are in this journey together, and then start taking the practice to people who are not in this journey. All you have to do is give space to each other. All you have to do is stop yourself from judging. All you're supposed to do is start listening. And all you're supposed to do is protect yourself from anything which is vicious, which is vile, which is going to get sucked you into a bad level of feeling, which could be ego, which could be anger, it could be frustration, it could be expectation. And when you reflect back and look at each other, all you realize is that you are becoming so amazing in your relationship. You'll become best friends, even though you are couples or your parents or your children, you'll become best friends with the other person. Because that is what the power of love, the feeling of oneness. When there's absolute, there's nothing called judgment. Yes, please.
If your partner is still identified with the mind and the pain body while you are already free, this will represent a major challenge, not to you, but to your partner. It is not easy to live with an enlightened person, or rather, it is so easy that the ego finds it extremely threatening. Remember that the ego needs problems, conflict, and enemies to strengthen the sense of separateness on which its identity depends. The unenlightened partner's mind will be deeply frustrated because its fixed positions are not resisted, which means they will become shaky and weak. And there is even the danger that they may collapse altogether, resulting in loss of self. The pain body is demanding feedback and not getting it. The need for argument, drama, and conflict is not being met. Be aware. Beware, some people who are unresponsive, withdrawn, insensitive, or cut off from their feelings may think and try to convince others that they are enlightened, or at least that there is nothing wrong with them and everything wrong with their partner. Men tend to do that more than women. They may see their female partners as irrational or emotional, but if you can feel your emotions, you are not far from the radiant inner body just underneath. If you are mainly in your head, the distance is much greater, and you need to bring consciousness into the emotional body before you can reach the inner body.
So here it was a lot about the pain body, the emotional body, the outer body, the inner body. So just rather than confusing yourself too much, because it's kind of deep here, for people who've got it, fantastic. For people who haven't, and try and simplify it. So it's very easy to start dropping your judgment. It's very easy to do that. It's not very tough. And when you drop that and you find that sense of joy in your relationships after this, it's absolutely heartening. And that's when you realize, oh, life is so amazing. Yeah, मैं judge नहीं कर रहा हूँ, just see सब कुछ इतना बढ़िया unfold हो रहा है. And if women are like the way this book says, they are very sensitive, they're sometimes irrational, they're sometimes emotional, and you being a man are realizing that because you can compartmentalize your feelings very easily. That's the way the DNA has been made. But if you see her for who she is, or if you see him for who he is, women have the most problem with men sometimes. He's not reacting enough, or he's not. So women tend to take whatever they've gone through further, and men tend to close it and just move on. So if you accept that this is how he is or she is, you will be able to reach a spiritual level in your relationship. So that's like, it's okay. That's the way they are. Then there will be no need for any argument, any drama, any conflict, any controversy, any judgment like, oh, he's so insensitive or she's so sensitive, or, all of whatever is going to come with it. So think about it. Are you ready to have this journey where you feel that, okay, everything is wonderful and let's move on? And if somebody is going through something negative, just be there as a listener. Just that's all that you need. Yes, please.
If isn't an emanation of love and joy, complete presence, and openness toward all beings, then it is not enlightenment. Another indicator is how a person behaves in difficult or challenging situations or when things go wrong. If your enlightenment is egoic, self delusion, then life will soon give you a challenge that will bring out your unconsciousness in whatever form, as fear, anger, defensiveness, judgment, depression, and so on. If you are in a relationship, many of your challenges will come through your partner. For example, a woman may be challenged by an unresponsive male partner who lives almost entirely in his head. She will be challenged by his inability to hear her, to give her attention and space to be, which is due to his lack of presence. The absence of love in the relationship, which is usually more keenly felt by a woman than a man, will trigger the woman's pain body, and through it, she will attack her partner, blame, criticize, make wrong, and so on. This in turn now becomes his challenge to defend himself against her pain body's attack, which he sees as totally unwarranted. He will become even more deeply entrenched in his mental positions as he justifies, defends himself, or counterattacks. Eventually, this may activate his own pain body. When both partners have thus been taken over, a level of deep unconsciousness has been reached of emotional violence, savage attack, and counterattack. It will not subside until both pain bodies have replenished themselves and then enter the dormant stage until the next time. There is only one of an endless number of possible scenarios. Many volumes have been written, and many more could be written about the ways in which unconsciousness is brought out in male female relationships. But as I said earlier, once you understand the root of the dysfunction, you do not need to explore its countless manifestations.
Tell me something. If we stop judging, how will our relationships be? If we stop judging, how will they be? Which means if we stop judging, there's nothing called expectation. There's nothing called blaming. You've done this wrong. You've done that wrong. You should have done it like this. You should have not done it like this. I'm not saying that we will just stay away from it completely. No, we will not. We are human beings. We will expect. But if we minimize this, if we say, oh, we need to be spiritual, practice, 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 then what are we doing? We have taken over our humanity the next level, and we will only witness bliss. Yes, there will be acceptance, there will be your love, loving always, we will flow. It'll become so again, perfect is a word which we use, Shruti, but I feel that nothing is perfect. Perfect itself puts us in a cage. Oh, now that I'm perfect, everyone around me can't question me because I'm perfect. I'm staying, so perfection is something I don't strive towards. People say strive towards perfection. I don't. Why? Because that's putting myself in again a box, again a label. Perfect. It's all perfect. For me, actually, if you ask me, everything is wonderful. And when it's not wonderful, you tackle it. And how do you tackle it? By simply allowing the love to flow. So that's it. Let's just go in a best position for ourselves where we understand what is the root cause. So if somebody is misbehaving with us, he or she is misbehaving with us, what do? We simply find the root cause. Oh God, isko ye problem hai. The person needs love. And that's when they will flow. Open and receptive is, yes, it's great. But in a relationship, you are just going to tell yourself that I am not judging. How do we work on each other that way? By simply telling each other, look, let's practice to be spiritual partners. Partners, parents, whatever. And if the bacha or the wife or the husband is saying something, please understand the root cause. Why is she or he or the child having so much of insecurity? Ultimately, it all boils down to lack of love. And when you love the person, tell them, I have your back, come what may, I'm here for you. There'll automatically be a dynamic shift in the body language of that person, no matter how old, no matter how young, because love is all we need and love is what we have, less of it for ourselves especially. So we're looking for it outside. So that's the most important thing. Yes, let's understand this with a little example. Yes, please.
Let's briefly look again at the scenario I have just described. Every challenge that it contains is actually a disguised opportunity for salvation. At every stage of the unfolding dysfunctional process, freedom from unconsciousness is possible. For example, the woman's hostility could become a signal for the man to come out of his mind. Identified state, awaken into the now, become present, instead of becoming even more identified with his mind, even more unconscious. Instead of being the pain body, the woman could be the knowing that watches the emotional pain in herself, thus accessing the power of the now and initiating the transmutation of the pain. This would remove the compulsive and automatic outward projection of it. She could then express her feelings to her partner. There is no guarantee, of course, that he will listen, but it will give him a good chance to become present and certainly breaks the insane cycle of the involuntary acting out of old mind patterns. If the woman misses that opportunity, the man could watch his own mental emotional reaction to her pain in his own defensiveness rather than being the reaction. He could then watch his own pain body being triggered and thus bring consciousness into his emotions. In this way, a clear and still space of pure awareness would come into being, the knowing, the silent witness, the watcher. This awareness does not deny the pain and yet is beyond it. It allows the pain to be and yet transmutes it at the same time. It accepts everything and then transforms everything. A door would have opened up for her through which she could easily join him in that space. If you are consistently or at least predominantly present in your relationship, this will be the greatest challenge for your partner. They will not be able to tolerate your presence for very long and stay unconscious. If they are ready, they will walk through the door that you opened for them and join you in that state. If they are not, you will separate like oil and water. The light is too painful for someone who wants to remain in darkness.
So again, it's very important to understand that here, if the minute we are off from judgmental position to a listening position, you are getting back on track. That's the only track we're supposed to walk on. Our life is like a railway station, right? Like in a way, you're the train who is moving from one place to another. So if you stop reacting, if you start listening, you're creating a space for pure awareness. And then you're truly being right now. You're truly seeing what's happening. And then you're letting awareness go higher and higher and higher. And then you're allowing these doors to open up for you, where you and I could be partners, where you and I could be the best of a relationship, whether it's any kind of relationship, it doesn't matter. So the minute we are getting away from this, we're realizing life is becoming beautiful. We are not separate, we are all one. And the light and the love will make us together forever intertwined as one. So the next section is very beautiful. Some of you will say, why has it been generically divided? You will understand this when you read it. And let me tell you, every man and woman has a yin and yang aspect. So the female has masculinity, the men have femininity. It's not like we're devoid of them. But yet they're saying why women are closer to enlightenment. That's section's name. The question is, are the obstacles to enlightenment the same for a man as a woman? So let's read it.
Yes, but the emphasis is different. Generally speaking, it is easier for a woman to feel and be in her body. So she is naturally closer to being and potentially closer to enlightenment than a man. This is why many ancient cultures instinctively choose female figures or analogies to represent or describe the formless and transcendental reality. It was often seen as a womb that gives birth to everything in creation and sustains and nourishes it during its life as form. In the Tao Te Ching, one of the most ancient and profound books ever written, the Tao, which could be translated as being, is described as infinite, eternally present, the mother of the universe. Naturally, women are closer to it than men since they virtually embody the unmanifested. What is more, all creatures and all things must eventually return to the source. All things vanish into the Tao. It alone endures. Since the source is seen as female, this is represented as the light and dark sides of the archetypal feminine in psychology and mythology. The goddess or divine mother has two aspects. She gives life, and she takes life.
So I don't know how many of you can relate right now. So in the Indian goddesses also, what is happening? One is the divine mother who's giving us birth, right? But there's also a Devi, Durga and Mata, and all is killing all vices, taking life. Why is that happening? These are symbolisms. Women are closer, okay, why? Because they're going through so much of pain and they're giving life to another life by compromising on her life. She may die, she may win, she may live. And when she goes through this, they're saying she's opening up to the infinity. She's eternally present. She's that time intertwined with the Mother Universe. And she's also right now with Mother Earth, understanding, okay, I am in this world together. And she is in this journey of giving birth and death. She's vanishing into the huge thing by just becoming one. When she sees that oneness, she's also seeing the light. She's also seeing the love. Why does a mother's love become unconditional? A child can get away with murder and she's going to be like for her child because she's such a giver. That's why the mother aspect of her makes her closer to enlightenment, is what this book and life is all about. Let's read further.
When the mind took over and humans lost touch with the reality of their divine essence, they started to think of God as a male figure. Society became male dominated, and the female was made subordinate to the male. I'm not suggesting a return to earlier female representations of the divine. Some people now use the term goddess instead of God. They are redressing a balance between male and female that was lost a long time ago, and that is good. But it is still a representation and a concept, perhaps temporarily useful, just as a map or a signpost is temporarily useful, but more a hindrance than a help when you are ready to realize the reality beyond all concepts and images. What does remain true, however, is that the energy frequency of the mind appears to be essentially male. The mind resists, fights for control, uses, manipulates, attacks, tries to grasp and possess, and so on. This is why the traditional God is a patriarchal, archal, controlling authority figure, an often angry man who you should live in fear of, as the Old Testament suggests. This God is a projection of the human mind. To go beyond the mind and reconnect with the deeper reality of being, very different qualities are needed: surrender, non judgment, an openness that allows life to be instead of resisting it, the capacity to hold all things in a loving embrace of your knowing. All these qualities are much more closely related to the female principle. Whereas mind energy is hard and rigid, being energy is soft and yielding, and yet infinitely more powerful than mind. The mind runs our civilization, whereas being is in charge of all life on our planet and beyond. Being is the very intelligence whose visible manifestation is the physical universe. Although women are potentially closer to it, men can also access it within themselves. At this time, the vast majority of men, as well as women, are still in the grip of the mind, identified with the thinker and the pain body. This, of course, is what prevents enlightenment and the flowering of love. As a general rule, the major obstacle for men tends to be the thinking mind, and the major obstacle for women, the pain body. Although in certain individual cases, the opposite may be true, and in others, two factors may be equal.
So these are not guidelines on how male is or how female is. There could be a person with a perfect yin yang energy. Like if you look at the Chinese logo, you have a perfect energy. You have both balanced. That also could be. In some people, masculinity could be more, femininity could be less, or vice versa. It doesn't matter physically what sex you are. So it doesn't matter. Now, what is happening is, if you realize a basic principle and the DNA making of a man or a woman, and if you learn to accept them, then you're moving away from a judger mentality. And then you're coming in a life where you're like, okay, so if you have a lot of masculine energy, you can curb it by learning to accept. So if you can't curb it by saying, oh, मुझे तो बहुत गुस्सा आता है, अब तो मैं नहीं करूंगा, या मुझे तो कंट्रोल करने का बहुत शौक है, अब तो नहीं करूंगा. You can't do that. But you can start affirming, you can start moving, okay, I learn to accept people the way they are. And when you're doing that, you're going to be in the being. When you're going to be in the being, it's very beautiful that the divine intelligence is going to take over. You will find a lot of physical manifestations in this physical universe. So let's understand that we are who we are for a reason. But we most definitely can become better versions of ourselves the minute we start accepting, the minute we start surrendering, the minute we start saying, I am open and receptive. Life changes. With this, we conclude today's reading, and we'll now move on to our heart thoughts. Thank you so much, Sania, once again for reading these beautiful, deep chapters for us every morning. Really grateful to you. Today's affirmation is again very, very beautiful. It's again about spirit, and we will just see this right now when the chapter opens up. So now we are coming in a journey where a lot of us are connecting with ourselves, connecting with our being. The minute you are dwelling on that, a lot of stuff is going to be happening at the right time. So let's understand what are we all about. Here we are in the now where we're learning something more. So it's all about time. When it's all about time, you will understand that I am here at the right time. If we start accepting life, we just read about it. We stop judging, then we are always in the right time, in the right place, doing the right things which are required by us. So left side says the work you're doing on yourself is not a goal. It is a process, a lifetime process. So enjoy the process. So what you and I are going through right now are process of life. It's not that we're doing too much. We're just learning to evolve with life. So can someone please read? Sanya, Nehal, would you want to read? Yes, please.
I am here at the right time. We are all on an endless journey through eternity, and the time we spend on this plane of action is but a brief instant. We choose to come to this planet to learn lessons and to work on our spiritual growth and to expand a capacity to love. There is no right time and no wrong time to come and go. We always come in the middle of the movie and we leave in the middle of the movie. We leave when our particular task is finished. We come to learn to love ourselves more and to share that love with all those around us. We come to open our hearts on a much deeper level. A capacity to love is the only thing we take with us when we leave. If you left today, how much would you take?
Thank you, Nehal. It's very important to understand that we are here in this journey together for a reason. And this reason is our spiritual growth. We have reincarnated as human beings because our spiritual growth has to be taken up. Our spirit has taken up this, and it's come in the right time. We are here in the perfect time. And whatever it was there, which is unfinished, can get finished very, very easily when we start loving ourselves and loving others around. When we start opening our hearts, when we start making ourselves the channels for love. So again, I say the process of life is only about love. What you are doing is what you're getting. So how much is it that you can take? How much love is it that you've left? How much love have you left in the hearts of others? That's what today is all about. Today, when we are, thank you, Neha. Thank you, Rahul sir. So today, let's do this beautiful meditation. In the first one-third section, you were open to manifest whatever. You think of your affirmations, you visualize, you do whatever. I will just guide you once into saying that this is time for manifestation. Now, your manifestation is completely upon to you. What do you want to manifest? Do you want to just say affirmations? Do you want to visualize it or do whatever? Then we come to a point of surrendering. Then you surrender. And the third section will be when you're in silence, trusting the process of life to flow through you. So let's go for it. Our back straight. We are firmly rooted. Soft smile on our faces. Hands in an open Gyan Mudra. Open or Gyan Mudra. Let's take a deep breath in. Fill ourselves with love. And exhale. Once again, inhale love. And exhale. The third time and the last time for the morning, let's inhale whatever you want and exhale. Use these 5 minutes to manifest whatever your heart desires. Now, whatever we have manifested, let's surrender, knowing we must trust the process of life, knowing whatever we've manifested, let it manifest for the highest good of us and the others. Surrender. And now, after we've been silent, let's give a round of gratitude for everything, everyone. Gratitude to Mother Earth, to our life, to heavens above, to all celestial beings, masters, angels, guardians, divinities, to life once again. Now let's fold our hands in gratitude, rub them together, feel the energy flow, bless your conscious subconscious, your wonderful face with all the five senses, your neck, your esophagus, shoulders, arms, back, upper, middle, lower, hips, chest, lungs, heart, liver, stomach, intestines, gallbladder, uterus, sexual organs, excretory organs, thighs, knees, calves, ankles, soles. Come back up. Dearest beautiful body, to all the organs, thank you for working on your optimal best. Muscles, tissues, fibers, glands, blood circulation system, trillions of cells. Thank you from the bottom of our heart. To the energies flows in me, I invoke you to share my love, light, blessings, and wishes of abundance on my loved Sangha, their loved being, and all beings on Mother Earth. Let there be light. Sanya, Nikita, Jigisha, Prakash, Nehal, Prashant, Rigu, Naveen, Seema, Rima, Sakshi Surekha, Archana, Kripa, Shami, Ankur, Yanji, Ushaji, Neetu, Bhuvan, Ankur, Pratima, Pratimaji, Shivani, Shubhra, Ravi, Akshay, Bharat, Karishma, Prachi Diwan, Siddharth, Vandana, Amit, Peena, Shruti, Richa, Mom, Prachi Diwan, Karishma, Poonam, Parul, Sunita, Kuldeepji, Shivangi, Shelly, Sailesh, Alona, Nisha, Jitendraji, Born Manduan for life, Rahul sir, and to everyone, lots of love and light, and to Amrita, to Sanjay sir, Ritesh sir, and Shweta. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And today we have a birthday in house, so let's have the birthday girl. Where is she? Shami and Ankur, can you please raise your... There you are, I spotted you. So very, very happy birthday to you. Wishing you the very, very best. A very happy birthday song from all of us. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Shami. Happy birthday to you. So a very happy birthday.
Thank you so much.
And I really wish you the very best ahead in your life, in your day, and may this be a life full of magic. Especially the two of you have come together, so I know it's going to be nothing short of magic. Do you want to share something with us, both of you as a couple, as a birthday girl?
Thank you for teaching us a new way of living. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for being open and receptive to all the learnings. So have a magical day. And thank you once again, everyone, at the Sangha. It was a beautiful morning. Let's see each other tomorrow at 5. Lots of love, light, and abundance to each one of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the